My name is Sheila Kimathi, and this is Sanaa Ya Wasanii, a show that highlights self-made artists in Kenya. So, today we have Bwana Deen, Mr. Deen Ahmed. Karibu sana.
Asante.
You're a director, DOP, cinematographer, same thing, writer. Tell us more about what you do.
My background is in animation. I started out in animation, and from there, I've more or less done all aspects of production. I've done animation. From animation, I went into editing. From editing, dived into DOP, and from DOPing, I've done my own writing, and from there, I've directed my own bits and pieces here.
People from outside, though, look at film as like an end product, like the pomp, the color, the big finales, the big, releases, right? Like Nafsi, you worked on Nafsi and the release was quite huge. And you've just done Giza, which is significantly huge. So how do you explain to someone that production isn't like face value? How do you tell someone you have to, come and see what production really is for us to bring out the end product? Because I think what we get is the end product, and guys are like, oh, the actor is so nice. Oh, the actors. What else? The lights. What else do people look at?
All the shiny bits and pieces, these cars, interacting with people. I guess you've already mentioned it to an extent. This production isn't something that's very easy to explain. Production is something you'd have to show people. And just from what you've said regarding something like Igiza, when we're looking around for houses to shoot and houses to shoot the main story, the main house, all of that, we had situations where we'd go to people's houses and we'd explain to them, we're going to be coming here and we're going to be shooting. The crew is going to be at 5 a.m. and we're going to be here for the whole day. And probably at night, while we would think we'd want to wrap at 6, it'd end up wrapping at 8. Most people seem to think that, that's okay, we'll be able to work with all these things. But when we do show up at 4:30 and it's 4 vans, truck, then all of a sudden there's 30 people walking up and down inside your house, there's a gigantic light, you can barely go to the toilet, people are laughing, there's arguments, there's literally a pile of shoes outside the front door.
Yes.
So these are things people won't tend to notice, or at least know that they happen until they actually
that particular
happen.
day.
Yeah. And at that point in time is when people realize, oh wow, this is a lot more. I've tried to also, because this is also something I face in my closer family. I'd tell them I'm working, but on Monday someone would come to the house and find you asleep, and guys are like, but I thought you're working. But it becomes difficult to explain that my work isn't necessarily office hours. On Monday, yes, I'll be in bed maybe until until midday. But all of a sudden, over the weekend, from Friday till Sunday, I'll be shooting from 3 a.m. all the way up until midnight, or something like that. And what this means is that as people are going to work, this is most likely us going back home.
Yes.
And as people are going to sleep, that's us setting up to go to work. The production is just one of those really difficult things to explain to people. It's easier to have someone come on set and see for themselves.
Have you had your parents ask you, what exactly is it that you do? Because I don't understand. You tell me this TV, okay, so we are seeing the program, but what exactly did you do? We only seen the actors here. So, because I seem to not be able to get through to my mom and tell her what I do for a living. She's like, yes, fine. Oh,
and
whatever.
Animation is a very difficult one to explain because, as animators would know, that anyone who do a lot of work on the computer, most of the time is you spent on the computer. So we're talking about upwards of 10 hours, 11 hours, 12 hours, where you're sitting on this thing and you're just clicking away. Your breaks will of course be maybe for food or something like that. But again, as any animator or anyone again who works on the computers and stuff will tell you, even food tends to take a backseat. So you find yourself working, and all of a sudden your parents will be like, this is the third time I've come to call in, maybe 8 hours, maybe 12 hours. You haven't got to eat. You haven't even gotten up. Are you really working? It looks like you're playing games. And of course, as an animator, what you're working on is something very colorful looking. And as you keep previewing it and all, it just looks all
And
exciting.
also, you're sitting in an African parent's home. You've been sitting for 8 hours plus.
It looks like a joke. It just so happens one of my distant cousins works in programming. He's about 10, 15 years older than me. My parents had the opportunity to go and stay with him and while he was working for a moment, and they then saw it with him. And I guess someone a bit older at that point in time, I'm talking about something that happened about 10 years ago.
When I just
started, yeah.
How did they allow you to get into this particular line of work they don't understand, yet you are a full engineer somewhere? How did you?
I was headstrong about it. When the time came for me to make the decision regarding what I wanted to do, I told them. And I feel at this point I was mature enough to actually explain, such that even though they wouldn't understand what I was doing, they'd understand my passion. And over time, me showing them that this is what I'm doing, this is how I'm doing it, getting validation from the various different people here and there. And one day, on Saturday, Makutano showed up and I pointed out my name on the credit. To be very honest, let me not lie to you, I still don't think my mom understands 100% what I do, but she has accepted that he likes it and it's paying his bills and he's busy when I show up. So I think that's the best you can ask for. Yeah, some understanding.
Filmmaking is a combination of processes. There's the writing, there's the lighting, there's the actors themselves casting, there's the story itself, like where are the bits, who are we talking to, what's their background. There's the shooting itself, there's the production itself, where you go on set and start shooting and doing everything like closer to end the project. And then there's the post. So at what point of filmmaking would you say the stakes are the highest?
That's a difficult one. Again, I've had, I don't know if I can say the good fortune of being present for all the steps. I'd like to say that there isn't any particular step that's more important than the other. They all have equal say. If we do really shoddy pre-production, then production has nothing to shoot, and definitely we won't have anything to edit. If we do a really good job in pre-prod and production then doesn't shoot properly, then we don't have anything to edit. And so on for the last stage, where if these two do their job properly and editor doesn't stand up, then we also lose something. What we say, at least in filmmaking, a mantra I've seen is every step we're writing, we have the story that wants to be a story during pre-prod. The amount of pride, the amount of work we'll do in looking for the locations and all that. There's the idea you have as an editor, as a director, there's the idea you have as a writer. But all these things also hinge on how much budget we have, whether we can get the locations we want. So at every step, we have to be fluid to see and to work with what we have best. The writer writes what he can write best. As the crew, as the various HODs, we look for these things, the wardrobe, the locations, the actors, the director who will give us the stuff, the technical details, what lights and all that. We utilize these things during production and we do the best we can. During the day of production, we'll have situations where we're coming to shoot. And as the actors and as the directors, we realize, hey, maybe we should change the script somewhat. In some cases, some scenes are thrown out. In other cases, other scenes are made up on the spot. So I think each step has a lot of importance. And we can't say one is more important than the other. Of course, those of us who have done all these things, there's the various pressures we're on. And I'd say production is just crazy on its own, because if we have 8 hours to shoot, we have 8 hours to shoot. Nothing more, nothing less. And we have to make it work within those 8 hours, whether the actor's available or not, whether it decides to rain or not, we just have to make it work. So as it were, it may seem that production has the most pressure, but as someone who has been editing a feature film for the last 5 months, that also is its own kind of wound.
So what happens when you're imported? Because most of the time you're called to go help shoot in Rwanda, Uganda. You're imported into, let's say, Uganda, and then we're in production stage, and you can clearly see the pre-production was not well done. So now we are in the thick of things. How do you elevate the situation, or how do you work yourself to go through that? Because you know this is going to be extremely painful. How do you prep yourself, prep your team? Because if you're going as a DOP now, you have who's my AC, who's my what are my lights? So how do you mitigate that? How do you just make it less painful for yourself?
This is where experience comes into play. Production is, to an extent, doing the same thing over and over. What's different are most likely who is in front of the camera and the locations we're shooting in. Otherwise, it's more or less the same thing. We'll just put the camera up on your shoulder and we're running after someone either in a forest or in a building or in a street of town, during the day, during the night, whether it's raining or not. The key part becomes, how do you as an individual deal with the problem? See now how this plays out to the mindset earlier. If you're very aggressive, if you are not solution oriented, then it becomes difficult. You start having sharp edges and we start, all of us on the crew will all just start clashing. But I think the best part for you here, or the best bit for you here, is look at the situation, understand the situation. If pre-prod wasn't done, it wasn't done. There's nothing much we can do as production except roll with the punches. But if we've done this over multiple years, then we know the best way to mitigate stuff. So I have my crew, and we have solved these problems a lot of the time. So should I turn around and give a code word, then we already know how to deal with that. So I, as a DOP, with my crew or with my team, will come in with this mindset of let's solve problem. And to an extent, that's what production is. We all know what we wanted to do today, but the dog isn't here and it's raining and the batteries are running out. So we have to make it work.
Making a film is a deep, emotional, almost wounding experience. You'll have to withstand productions for as long as 7 months or even more in non-conducive areas for mental wellness. So how do you keep it all together? Like the pressure can be intense. The AD is yelling at you. You're trying to capture the shot the director wants, but he still doesn't want it. So how do you keep it together without just yelling at everyone like, you know what, I'm point. Chukueni kamera zenu na mu shoot wenye mnajua. How do you do that? How do you...
As you just said, my last production, from the time we started on pre-prod up until literally the last shot was done, played out about 7 to 8 months. And as you say, it is quite intense. As we just talked about, we talk about more or less 12-hour days, sometimes 16-hour days. Towards the last set of the week, it got to a point where every day of the week we were doing 16-hour days. So 16-hour days, then you come back home, we have to charge these things, so on and so forth, and get ready and go out in less than 4 to 5 hours. It became quite intense at some point. But again, as I said earlier, this is all about mindset. From the point we begin, of course, being chosen to do something like that, the producer or the director or the EP already knows what everyone is capable of. So by the fact that you're already on that table in that production means you have what it takes to make it through. This production for me and all these things are things I've been doing for over 12 years now, 12, 13 years. And it's always been grueling. The idea is, what do you want? And do you understand what it takes to get what you want? So for us to jump in and to do this production, we all know what we wanted. We all know what we want at the end of it. And even if it means 18-hour days, then we understand that if I do the 18-hour days and I put my best foot forward, what I get out of it will be worth it for me. You could also see us saying production and having these people around you is almost like a family. We know what family is like. Family isn't something you can really escape. You'll get a phone call and it's your brother calling. You're not going to not pick up that call. Your mom is calling. These are people you'd live with. And again, as you said, we're all farting here. We're all stepping on each other. Someone has decided to steal your food. These are things that happen. But if we all understand we're in it together for that long haul, then it makes the journey easier. Otherwise, if we're all deciding to do our own various bits and pieces here and there, then it becomes quite difficult. And the other thing to understand is a production, the story behind the production, the script that we're going to shoot, that thing knows what it wants to be. And the EP, the producer, all of us put together as the team, we are to understand our various roles there. Production isn't about the individual. Production is about everything. Production is about everything from the EP all the way down to our unit manager and the person who's moving these chairs around. If these people, if even just one of them decides to do something else, then it's not going to work out. The script knows what it wants to be. And as the people chosen, we are there to facilitate that. I'm not there to insist that this is the shot I want, but I'm there to help the director understand and for me to also understand what the director wants and what the story wants. And if we can agree upon that and make something that we're all happy, then I'm happy as well. The point is not to argue. 8 months of arguing with people is just going to destroy you. You've got to understand what you want inside and work towards getting there.
So I'm giving you a scenario where you're on set as a DOP. You've gone above and beyond research for a shot, set up the lights, everything. And then once you hit roll, the director is like, yeah, what? I do not like this shot. Who did this shot? Why is this shot even on my camera, right? So how do you get to deal with a feeling that and this is the point where you feel like you had given it your all and you are sure of your shot. So how do you deal with the feelings of what's called intrinsic shame on set? Because of course your name is on the line and whatever it is that you called for, it is you on the line, right? So how do you deal with the intrinsic shame that comes with it? And sometimes you feel kind of that like you've dropped the ball or sense of unworthiness, like, and I know said so siya timnongelesha nang, oh sorry. Right? You're like, who the fuck set up this shot? So how do you deal, like, how do you breathe, take a breath, and then you're like, yeah, let's start again. Come
on. A good set allows for communication. Allows for communication from the top to the bottom, all the way back. But it also allows us to understand that this is a ship. A ship can only have one captain. If we all captain, the ship is not going anywhere. So our assumption is that our captain knows where he wants to go, so that it becomes easy for us to give him what he wants, for us to go where we're supposed to go. So from there, then communication, so on and so forth. I can't lie, a couple of times we've had scenarios like that, but what then happened was, at least behind the scenes, was that we didn't communicate with each other well enough. But once that complaint pops up, and we then realize what he wants, so on and so forth, we move. As you've said, set doesn't allow for kid gloves. It doesn't allow for sorry, wishy. Set is people crying in the bathroom. A set is not a soft environment. Everyone is up at 4. Some people are up earlier than 4. We're talking about a set where someone has come from Kitengela, someone else has come from Ruaka, then we're picking up people in Kilimani, and then we're going to Nderi. And we're going to finish up at 7 o'clock, and we're going to come from Nderi, and these people have to go home. So there's not a lot of space for treating people with kid gloves, because we also need to move quickly. If there's a problem, let's talk about the problem, let's talk about the solution. In most cases, we are talking about the problem and the solution as we move, not sit down, have a meeting to deal with it. We are solving these things on the fly. The point is that we get to a point where the communication is clear enough that it doesn't sound insulting, so that everyone leaves this discussion having understood, this is where I did wrong, this is what I'm to do next to solve it. And the other person, and the other person, and that way we move quickly. I find that the sets where we have a lot of arguments and discussions are the sets where I learn the most. Because it means I've told you what I feel works, You've told me what you feel works, and together we end up on a solution. I prefer to have sets like that rather than a set where someone says, do this, we do it, and we move on. I would rather have communication. This communication allows everyone on the set to have intention and to understand the intention of what they're doing. So I tend to take these things in my stride. Of course, in the moment, they'll shake you, but you've also got to understand what you're there for.
Have you quit a set before?
No. I've
Why
never
not?
quit a set.
It feels like you should at some point. I mean, it's gotten close to. Has it ever gotten close to you quitting?
It's gotten close. You can't lie. Everyone, I don't think there's anyone in the world who has ever had perfect days all their lives.
Particularly on that, no.
But should you have been present in your work and the work comes out and you view this work, then you love your work. And at least for me, that's what drives me. What drives me is that as much as it'll hurt in this moment, this is like a workout. A push-up isn't easy. A burpee isn't easy. A deadlift isn't easy. But we know what we want at the end. So if we know what we want and we appreciate that, then we are there for that work. Of course, the work needs to make sense to us as well.
So how do you handle anger management? Because
I start off by choosing. I vet the products I work on. I vet the people I work with. If I can work with you, we will work 12 hours. We will work 18 hours. We will work 24 hours. There's sets I've done 36 hours with maybe a 2-hour break in between and things like that. Which, see, you can only ever do this with people whom I feel we're in this together with. That way it feels like as a team we are moving to.
All right, then that calls for a shot. Because
Really? What are you
yes,
celebrating?
your hard work to mental stamina on set.
To mental stamina on set. Okay.
Yes?
Yes.
It's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Okay. Right? 5.
That is quite bad.
Is there a point where the extensiveness of your work has driven you into addiction? Like, have you, you cannot raw dog this life like this. You cannot just, I don't know, like, has your work has work really driven you into that point, like towards that point? And how did you bring yourself back? Or,
Well, what I'd say, as far as addiction is concerned, I'd start off by saying my bad habit would be my work.
so you're a workaholic.
I think I only have space for one addiction in my life, and that actually tends to be my work.
And that, that's an addiction on its own, right?
Yes, it is. I am a workaholic. I spend most of my waking hours doing something to do with my work. And I don't know whether this is sad or this is unfortunate, but since I have a lot of aspects of production under my belt, from animation, the editing, and all of that, a lot of the research I do ends up falling into one of those things at any point in time. Sometimes a bit irritating because it means I can't just watch a film. I can't just read a book. There'll be a way it's going to turn into a frame, there'll be a way it's going to turn into a scene. But I feel like I also love that aspect of me because it feels like I see moments and I then want to figure out how to reverse engineer this moment and share it with the rest of my work.
But at what point do you just leave? When do you leave?
Now I'm sleeping.
Because
When I'm
okay,
eating.
this is an addition with almost all filmmakers, if not all, like not all creatives, right? Anyway,
I think honestly, for you to be good at what you do, to an extent, you do live what you do. Look at the famous painters we know. Look at the famous dancers we know. Look at the famous swimmers. Everyone, there seems to be a hallmark of obsession.
yes,
Yeah.
obsession and the obsession leads to addiction. Is it?
Yes. I'd
So
say
are
that.
you-
Of
are
course,
you-
I'm not a psychologist, so I can't give you that full chain. But
Are you a alcoholic because you see other people, your competition doing better than you, or you think they're doing more things than you, or is it the fact that you just find yourself in work and you're just working? Is this
my drive is internal. I don't do things because my colleagues or my peers do it. I do things because I want to do it. So we'll go watch a film. I see a shot I like. And when I come back home, I'll unconsciously gravitate to figuring out how to make that shot happen. As I'm playing my games, I'll see the way the menu, the user interface will play out. And all of a sudden, I'll find myself in After Effects or in Photoshop or Illustrator, and I'm building out those elements. I feel like that, on one side, it keeps me sharp, but it also keeps me on this journey of constantly trying to learn something new. And with that, while I may say I'm not competing with the people around me, all of a sudden, because we work on things based off of what the zeitgeist has put out. Currently, we have like cutout animation is the whole vibe. 2 years ago, it's one-take films. 2 years ago, it's something else on. So in the pursuit of learning that, that's how I'll keep abreast or keep with my colleagues or the world around me. But my drive isn't them. My drive is what I want to do, what I want to learn.
What accomplishment have you had now that a 12-year-old, 15-year-old would have been stoked for?
One thing, I guess, about cinematography and about the creative art is that a lot of these ideas and a lot of these concepts that we see are inside our head. And the challenge is taking it out of your head and then putting it in a way that I can share with the people around. That's I think, the struggle of any artist, whether it's a musician, a painter, and all that. So getting to a point where I'm able to manipulate the tools and the assets and combine this with my thoughts and put out something that is very close to, if not one-to-one or an improvement to my thoughts, that's what I've always strived for. There's an edit I worked on towards the end of last year where we were doing a documentary on matatus in Nairobi. And this is one of the things that I'd fleshed out a lot earlier in terms of what shots I wanted to see and all that. And I think I was very close, if not 100% at what I'd visualized versus what I shot. And I feel like, should I show 12-year-old or 15-year-old me that video? I think the mind would be blown.
Nice.
Yeah.
Which people? Which documentary is this? Can we do you have access to it?
Yes, in fact, it's on YouTube. It was posted on YouTube, I think, a couple of weeks ago. A documentary by the Goethe Institute on hip-hop in Nairobi and the influences of hip-hop in Nairobi. So we actually did 3 things, but the one I edited was the one on matatus. But we did it across 3 main subjects, matatus, fashion, and the political aspect, how politics and hip-hop
intertwine. Now, as a movie maker, as a creative and a filmmaker, you make a film and you're not 100% sure that the crowd is going to take it the way you want it to take it. So how do you deal with that kind of invalidation? How do you deal with that kind of, like, you see how you go show your friends your film and then they sleep in between and they're like, oh, it was nice. And they didn't see anything. Alafu unaleta muliona nini? Ah, we movie yako ni poa. So you're like,
I tried not
an experiment.
I tried not to show, or at least I try not to produce work for my fellow filmmakers. We are fickle bonds. I prefer Deacon's movies. I don't like this, I don't like that. And then we have my friend who also has similar things. Then we were shooting last night, so no one has slept. So if I put up a film and we all read these things every day, this is not the audience. The real audience is someone like my mom, my sister, a distant cousin. If I can share with them that video and they're impressed by it, then I feel I've gone somewhere. Mine isn't. You see, we tend to be, for lack of a better word, we tend to be hipsters about the stuff we do, all highbrow, so on and so forth. But the truth is, any art form should be able to reach the widest audience. Whether we like it or not, example like Bob Marley. If I say Bob Marley right now, everyone in this room has heard Bob Marley. But no one in this room is a musician. None in this room can do reggae music. We don't have to have that to appreciate it. So my chase and my struggle and my main objective in making whatever it is I'm making isn't for my peers to understand it. It's for the larger audience to understand it. Everything I do is in towards sharing of a particular emotion, sharing of a particular vibe. I feel like our lives are moments after moments of emotions put together in particular situations. And how we all interact with that is what brings out this drama and the stories that we'd be interested to hear. So ours would then be, let's take a Kenyan story in a Kenyan context and share that with the world. Not necessarily with Kenyans. Kenyans may not appreciate it because this is something that they see every day. But share it with the world. And then all of a sudden the world is like, wow. So buses in Kenya have 21-inch subwoofers in the back seat. And this is something that we are all like, not us as Kenyans, because for us it's normal. And in fact, for us, if I get to the stage, this thing is too loud. Let me get onto this other. But these are things we'd want to share with the rest of the world so that they are amazed by it. That's why we're watching the Hollywood movies. That's why we're watching the Nigerian movies. They're showing us something different. And even for us with our own local films, it seems like we lean too much on either the local tropes or we try and chase Hollywood as well.
Oh God,
rather than trying to understand what we are and
what we
our
have
lives,
within, yes.
and then try and share that.
And our authenticity, because I fight so much with that, because even in our dialogue, guys are using and like, yo, Wakenya tuongeangi hivyo, tukwe tu real kidogo tu. Like, you know, like I'm trying to, let's say, try to take someone out. And then you come with the American, stereotype. Trying to, I am like, you don't feel.
Remember though,
you feel fake.
That's what that person feels is valid for their life. But
why is
if we're to show that interplay, and if we're to show those contrasts, then it works.
Then why is it that we're leaning more into trying to ape everyone else but ourselves? Why is it that we're trying to ape each and everyone's art, but not trying to authenticize ourselves?
Kenya is in a very interesting position. Whenever people talk about Africa, there's literally a handful of countries that they actually do talk about. We'll hear a lot about Egypt, we'll hear a lot about Nigeria, we'll hear a lot about South Africa. To an extent, we are like a gate into Africa. And with our own access to a lot of media, so on and so forth, that's what happens. As a country, we're kind of young. Well, I'd almost go as far as to say we are teenagers. And what do teenagers do? Teenagers want to fit in. So you'll try and dress like what other people dress like. You'll try and ape what they say. You'll try and do what they do. We as a country, and now when you come into now the creative industry and stuff, we need to mature. Mature enough to recognize what we have intrinsically as a country, as a people. Be proud of that. And once we're proud of that, then we can stand up and show those things. This is what the Nigerians are doing. This is what the South Africans are doing. If you look at the rest of the countries around us, Tanzania, Uganda, so on and so forth, they start with appreciating what they have first before going out. So I think as a country, we need to do that first. Once we do that, then we'll end up having people like Bamboo, who, while they have their accent, they're also proud to be Kenyan.
They're giving us gems.
There we go.
So was really good.
Yes, and you can then see that his accent wasn't a matter of him affecting the accent, but it's part of his upbringing. And now him combining that with him being a Kenyan allows him to give us something unique that we as Kenyans have not seen before, but we should also treasure.
What is your all-time favorite Kenyan production?
Just the same way I said earlier about the film, it's hard to pick out a favorite. When you're a kid, there's something you like. When you're a bit older, there's something you like, and it goes like that. What I can say is, as a kid, I really like Kenyan. And I miss the fact that we do not have anything like that. Okay. Yeah, being shot or like that. Apo Katikati, there's a talk show, there's a game show actually we used to have. Victoria, I've forgotten. Who's Smarter Now?
Who's Smarter Now? Yeah, okay, yeah.
And I guess something a bit more recent, Morning After. Actually, it's kind of a toss-up. Kind of a toss-up between Morning After and there's another short film called Millet. Both of these are docubox things. I really like that. As far as things like TV series and all, there's a lot of things that have been put out, including stuff that I've worked on, but I'm not sure that they're Kenyan yet. Okay, in regards to stuff that's a bit more recent, I'd say there's 2 short films that I really, really, really liked and really stuck to me. One of which is Morning After with Charlie Karumi.
Nice. I saw that.
Charlie Karumi, Fuiwambwe. Yeah. And the second one is Millet. Now, Millet, I've forgotten the actors, but it's just a beautiful story set in a very Kenyan setting that allows us to see aspects of what being Kenyan is about.
Would you say social media has taken over the film industry?
No. We are every innovation that pops up, someone is always up there to say they're taking our jobs. The fact that you can go to the supermarket and you can buy paint, brushes, a canvas, and all of that doesn't mean you're going to dethrone Van Gogh. What it means is that more people can be artists. And to me, that's a plus. The more of us that are out there, the more information is shared, the more feelings are shared, the more all these things equalize us. I for one, am like, bring it on. Because again, if you start off with like where we came from, should I have wanted to make a film as a child, I'd have had to learn how to shoot film, find a way of purchasing a camera, find a way of purchasing the film, do the shoot. I'm going to skip all of the actual production issues. Do the shoot, find a way of developing this film, and then editing it. Okay. Now contrast that with literally me pulling out my phone and shooting. And this phone, by virtue of the phones that we currently have, this thing already has 3 lenses. It has an obscene amount of storage space. If you compare this space with where we were coming from. Yeah. And basically I have access to editing software on the phone as well. So meaning that I can whip out my phone, we can take 2 hours, we shoot a little story here, and by the end of the day, we'll have edited it and posted it on YouTube. I think that's a plus for anyone involved in film because there's no barrier of entry. It means if you, an experienced film director, have a phone, you can give us a film.
Give me 3 names of your favorite Kenyan cinematographers in their works.
I'll start off with my current, my person, a very, very, very close friend of mine. We have done a lot of projects together for a very long time. It's close to 10 years now. And he pushes me every day he pushes me, and I appreciate it. His name is Abdi Shuria.
Abdi Shuria.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. My second favorite would be Ahmed Deen. He's one of the people who's pushed me towards Steadicam. The first time I see this thing, it's this contraption, a vest, and all these giant bits and pieces, and it just looked like a dance. And off of him, I picked up a few skills here and then, got the push to buy my own kit and to go ahead.
I remember you were shooting, you were doing Steadicam for the previous production that just ended, right?
Yes. I did Steadicam on the Giza. I've done Steadicam on Baba Twins. There are a couple of other things in the middle, a couple of music videos here and there, a couple of commercials here and there.
What's the most intense set that you have been on that you almost quit?
For now, we'll say it's my last production. Yeah. Yes.
How close was it?
How close was it? I don't know. I think it's also very easy to tell yourself, I'm tired, but if you didn't take the step, then I guess you weren't actually that close. Most of the hard jobs I've been on, I've genuinely asked myself the question, is this what I wanted to do? But asking yourself is just asking yourself. Actually going out and doing it is the hard one.
You get to the point where you're like,
Yeah.
are you thinking your career choice right now? So if you're not a filmmaker, whom would you be? But you have so many aspects that you tap into.
I do so many things. I went to school for engineering. I can fix most cars. I do plumbing, I do electrical work, I can do masonry.
Wow. Okay. So I need to go.
Yes. I also dabble in farming here and there. Yeah. So I can survive.
Yeah, film can go away and you'll still
I'll still be good. Yeah.
You'll still be sane.
Yes.
As much as
Very sane. Yes.
Yeah. Why are you always barefoot on set?
The one complaint everyone has.
Yes.
Okay. Set for me is about, to an extent, being comfortable. I'm going to be on set, again, for upwards of 10, 12 hours. I'm going to have an 8-kilogram brick on my shoulder. I'm going to have a 25-kilometer rig hanging off my hip. I'm going to be squeezed into the back of a car. I'm going to be hanging on top of a water tank. I'm going to be running on Kokoto. It's very set. Set is quite uncomfortable. People seem to think that because the chair is branded crew or director, that people have time to sit. People don't have time to sit. People will sit on Apple boxes, cases. You'll sit on the side of the car, all that. Yeah.
The ground, you don't care. At a point, you just cease to care.
And it just so happens that you're going to be on your feet for a significant period of time.
Mm-hmm.
I love being barefoot. Being barefoot allows me to move at a particular speed whenever I need to. So whenever I can be barefoot, I'll be barefoot.
Injuries, nini, manze, stepping on yuck things.
See, you look at where you're stepping. I was born and brought up on a farm. So
but the set is not that. The phone is set is the most disgusting place you could ever want to be at any particular time.
I'll choose the set. I'll choose the set. I'm not always barefoot. I've received this complaint from a lot of people. Hey. I'm not always barefoot. Yeah.
So tell me about this particular scene. You remember this scene? The girl in the yellow jumper.
The girl in the yellow jumper.
You got into an incident where you had to shoot something without the driver knowing how to drive. Take us through yours.
It's always funny. I'm going to complain to production. Why do we not ask the cast whether they can drive? Why do you not prove these people can drive? Because it's of the last 6 sets I've worked on, we've had an incident on each of these sets where each person here does not know how to drive.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
And they are the lead main driver?
Yeah, they are supposed to be the one driving. So we'd have a scenario where we have a manual car and the talent was asked, do you know how to drive? He said, yeah, I know how to drive. And we put him on the car. We bolt 2.5 million worth of equipment to the front of the car and the car jerks and the entire crew and everything stops. And we're like, okay, can I please have all my cameras and all my lenses?
Until you decide?
Figure out whatever it is you want to figure it out before you ram my stuff into a wall. And it's not the first time.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the first time. It's been multiple scenarios. And in these cases, we get to a point where either the actor is changed at that moment, or we end up with solutions where people are pushing the car.
What were your thoughts when you walked into this?
So it seems the yellow jumper is going to give us a lot of mileage. Huh? Before getting to the scene, the director had already done storyboards. He had done storyboards for the entire film. So on my first meeting with him, I spent about 2 to 3 hours going through the boards. So go through the boards. And as a technical DOP, I like understanding how we're going to solve things. As the DOP, as the operator, we are there in that space with this person hanging under the chair. So I need to understand how it's working. So should something not work, we are there to help him. I also need to understand how it works so that I can pick the best angle so as not to show the cheat. So we looked at this and we asked him, how do you want to solve it? And he had a solution. He also didn't have a solution. We then go look at production design. We asked them the same thing as well. They had a solution. It was also 50-50. But we had at least 2 days before we got there. So we had 2 days to try plan A. Plan A backfired spectacularly. Try plan B. Plan B backfired even more spectacularly than plan A. And guess what? It became ropes. It became ropes and holding this thing. And that's what we ended up doing. So as the DOP frames up A cam, a frame up B cam. So as we were shooting, we set up both frames, we aim, and director calls action. And as we start rolling, our hands are here. So the rope cuts and we immediately catch it. And while it may look very smooth on the final shot,
the movie,
it was 2-arm power lowering this guy down.
And the art guys.
Yes, and all that. And basically, all these things are happening. Don't forget, there's a cow, there's a gaggle of geese. There's a lot of things happening in this room at the same time. And these are among the things that we say they add production value. And definitely they did add production value. And when you look at the film, that shot looks fantastic.
In all the experience that you've gathered in the 13 years that you have been in the industry, how have you seen the industry morph? Or what challenges are still holding us back to get to where we need to get? Has it morphed for the better? Or are we trying to fit into a trend? Are we creating a film industry that works for Kenya? Are we working in a film industry that works for everybody?
We've definitely changed. What I'd say is, off of the stuff, some of the things we already talked about, the fact that there's YouTubes, there's SoundClouds, there's Vimeos, everyone has phones, means that everyone has access to these. And truly speaking, in the last few years, you can see the impact of this stuff because a lot more people are shooting music videos. If we were to take a drive to town on Sunday, you're literally going to walk past people.
70.
Yeah, people who are shooting their own small things with their own phones, with little DSLRs and stuff like that. And what it means is that overall, there's a lot more content being put out. So the question comes now, like, is there a lot more high-end content being put out? That growth has only popped up, I think, over the last 4 years, 3-4 years, from 2018, 2019 onwards. By virtue of the fact that everyone has access to YouTube, everyone has a decent smartphone. Most smartphones at this point shoot at HD. And we're not even talking about the Samsungs that will shoot at like 8K. Of course, Apple is there touting its phone as a cinematic masterpiece, so on and so on. So everyone has access to these tools. What I'd say we don't really have access to is the knowledge behind the tools or the knowledge to make particular choices. That's where the more professional filmmakers come in, where we make better things, bigger things, things that the young ones would want to aspire to. Growth-wise, it's a bit interesting. We had like a bit of stagnation up until sometime in 2018, late 2019. And I guess 2 things happened. On one side, we have Corona happening. Corona happening means we were all at home. We all didn't have anything to do but stay at home and do. And I'm sure we all struggled to write stuff and then put out things and realize that, hey, man, I don't have to sit in this 9 to 5. I can actually put out what I want to put out. And all of a sudden, there was an explosion in content, homemade content and all of that stuff. Combine that now with our TikToks and everything, and every other person is now an influencer or making something. On top of that, we have Netflix recognizing Amazon Prime, recognizing Africa as a market. In recognizing Africa as a market, they also recognize that Africa has the content creators. So over the last 2 or so years, we'll see all of a sudden there's been a lot of option content on Netflix, on Amazon Prime, on Showmax. And especially Showmax, if we look over the last 6 months or so, there have been 4 distinct productions being put out. So it seems that they are finally seeing that there's something out here. And you see now with democratization of the tools, all the smartphones and everything, and investment from the outside market, we then finally get us improving. Because prior to this, if you were to really, really, really look for what we have done, we have a very big gap between when things like Crime and Justice came out and when things like Cobra Squad came.
Oh God, yes, that's an entire
A very,
lifetime.
very big gap of homemade content
Yes.
not being there. And now when you look at the gap between Cobra Squad and the Kenyan Bunnies, you have another really big gap hapo katikati. Yes, there's content being put out, but the question is it content that's eating what's out there, or
Is it
our
our
own content? Of course, the argument is that Crime and Justice isn't necessarily our own, or that Igiza or County 49 and all. But at least with these, the Kenyans, as directors, as cast, as writers, had a very big input in it in comparison to what we had before. So yes, the industry is growing, and it's over the last few years, it's grown a lot more than it has over the last 10 years. And that's a really big bonus.
How would you define success? Do you feel like you're successful in whatever you do? What is success to you?
Man, success. Wow, success. Success is such a strange thing. You may feel that you're successful, but it's also something that people would perceive from outside. I'd like to think I'm successful when I'm able to translate. If I'm able to get the story, share this with you such that the nuances of the story come across, that you who are to sit and watch this feel connected to it not because she's a woman, but because the emotions that are being showcased there are emotions you feel, that you would have questions that pop up from this media, and these questions would push you to ask other people, like, is this what I'm feeling? Is this how I'm feeling it? So being able to do that, and for people to really be able to understand that and feel that, then I'd feel I'm successful. I've done a lot of work over the years. Some hasn't been, I guess, received the way I'd expected to, but definitely I've had questions, I've had answers, I've had discussions over part of the work I've done. And in as far as that is concerned, I'd say yes, to an extent, I have been successful.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
That is a very good note to end on.
Thank you.
All right, this has been our show. Wasanii Ya Wasanii. Thank you so much, Ahmed Deen.
Asante.
See you very soon. Looking forward to your works, to see lots of your works.
Asante.
Thank you so much. Woo!